Hey, I'm back. Hopefully the internet will decide to behave this time. I just got started a few minutes ago, I guess it was, and the internet crashed where I was, so I had to come to a different spot and try it again. So hopefully we'll start getting get this thing going through now. I don't know what the whole deal was. But welcome to the Trump, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan People's Grassroots Campaign Facebook-a-thon. For the rest of this weekend, we're trying to build our numbers. So go to your Facebook page, look in there to find your people, and invite them into to our group as well. We need to get this done. We need to get Donald Trump elected. Today, when Robert asked me to do the 9/11 version of this, it puts a little pressure on me because of the fact that let's face it, 9/11 is one of the key days in our nation's history, and it's fresh for most of us. I'm sure you are also aware of where you were and what you were doing on that fateful day. I know myself, I was getting up and getting ready for work, walked in and saw the first tower burning, and then that transfixed through that whole process. At the time, I was selling new homes, so I didn't have to be at work until noon. So when I got there, what did you want to do? I mean, obviously didn't want to do anything. So I stood there, and I was in a brand new subdivision, so I was the only house in it. So I was standing there kind of numb, just trying to find whatever news I could find. I didn't have cable, so I was having to fight it for what I could do. I saw some road workers over on Mount Comfort Road, and they weren't particularly interested in doing road work either. They were standing under a shade tree and visiting and talking and trying to sort through their own minds and hearts what was going on. And so I went over there to go see them. And hey, Warren and Donna and Randy, Laura, it's good to see you guys. I will do the best I can on reading this because it's on my phone, so it's small, but I'll do what I can. But we went over there and started talking to those guys. And what was wild, we were standing there having a conversation when all of a sudden a huge boom, the ground shook, everything was just, coming, we immediately freaked out. And thanks a lot, Warren, that's going to be helpful. But there's this massive boom. We immediately thought we were just north of Fort Benjamin Harrison. We thought maybe that had just been hit. I mean, it is the payroll for the Army, so that'd be a great place to hit. And they didn't. It turns out we looked up and we saw a big jumbo jet flying over, surrounded by three fighter jets. And we realized it was a sonic boom, which I hadn't heard since I was a kid. So obviously it was the president going back to the White House. I don't know what you guys, let's face it, one of the wonderful things about, the most wonderful thing about 9/11 is it did show us that this country can come together, that we are not so far apart that we can't still find each other, that we can't still find a common cause and a common relationship and a common belief in each other. We did come together as a country. If you've not watched the History Channel's 15 years later, I strongly recommend it. It's absolutely amazing. It really will get your heart when you're sitting there listening to the largest flotilla rescue in history that I didn't even know existed. I never heard of this until just recently. But all these guys just basically, stole their boats. They didn't tell anybody they were going to do this. They didn't take their routes. They just started evacuating people off Manhattan. So that was an amazing thing, and that was a beautiful moment in our history. Unfortunately, politicians got involved, and politicians were trying to figure out how they could capitalize on it and turning people against each other for their own political gain and their own financial interests and things like that, which is where we find ourselves today. We're talking a lot about 9/11 of 01, 15 years ago, but it seems like the media has forgotten all about 9/11 of 12, which was 4 years ago today, and that was when one of our presidential candidates let 4 Americans die, and would have probably let a bunch more. We had 39 or so in the CIA headquarters. We had the ones in the ambassadors' areas as well. One thing that I got a chance, I had the honor of going a chance to meet Chris Tanto Peranto, who was one of the ones that was involved in Benghazi. He was he was an Army Ranger who was a contract worker in the CIA compound. And he was talking about some things that really we hadn't heard about it. We didn't know a whole lot about when it came to the Benghazi situation. You know, Chris Stevens was an ambassador, but Chris Stevens was not just an ambassador. He was a pretty special kind of level of ambassador. What Tonto was talking about was, he said that there are different levels of ambassadors in our state services. We've got the ones that make big donations and then get great, appointments to Switzerland or something, so they can go party for, on our dime for a lot of money. I keep telling I want my kids to become president so they can make me an ambassador to Jamaica, that type of a thing. That is not what Chris Stevens was. Chris Stevens was one that came up through the State Department. He would have been about the equivalent of a 3-star general in the military category. He had really worked his way up. He was a really top-level ambassador. And those guys normally do not move about without major detachments of personnel around them to protect them. And he was put out here on this lonely little island with 3 contract workers that had a combined 8 years of military experience. So, like when Tonto was talking about, he said when they got there and started looking into it and they started seeing what the security was in that compound, he goes, they realized they had none. They actually, these guys didn't know what they were doing. They were very, untrained, and they didn't have the weaponry to really protect themselves anyway. So so he was talking about how, he and some of the other ones from the CIA headquarters, which is just about a mile down the street, they were going to, they told him, they go, look, if things come down here, we'll come help you. We will make sure we'll protect you. That was not their job. That was not in their job description. But they said, look, we're going to do it. And they said that the guys that the State Department under Hillary had hired to protect Ambassador Stevens were actually militia that were very leaning towards the enemy, as far as they were actually had ties and affiliations with the enemy. So it's not really surprising that they weren't doing a whole lot to protect them. When all this stuff comes down, when the firefight took place, the ex-SEALs like Tonto and the different ones tried to get in there. They were in their cars. They were ready to go over there to go to protect these people they promised that they would protect. And they were told no, and they were told no again, and they were told no again, and they were told by their station chief, kept telling them no, and then they would get word coming in from the State Department, no, you can't go. Finally, they'd had enough. They just got in the car and took off against orders. Now, I didn't know these things. If you're in the military, you may know these. I did not, especially if you've ever been a military contractor. What these guys did when they made that decision to break the rules and go against the orders to go protect those men in the compound, they knew that they were also giving up any insurance. They were no longer going to be insured by the United States. There won't be any health insurance for them, so any injuries that they incurred were on their own. They also had no life insurance for their families if something happened to them. So they're running into situations. They actually went out knowing that if they got shot, it was going to be on them. Their families were not going to have anything. They were going to be, hospital bills were on themselves, and they went anyway. That shows you the kind of men that these people were and are. So, but anyway, Hillary let them die is really what it comes down to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She Obama, whoever it was, refused to send people in. There was a Marine attachment that was only about a half-hour flight away that was up in the plane and ready to go. And they were told to stand down. The general then said, we're going to go anyway, and the Obama administration fired him on the spot and replaced him. So, I mean, it was a situation where we just aren't used to this kind of stuff in our military. We're used to taking care of our military and things like that, and obviously we do not. So, anyway, so it's 9/11. But we need to do that. By the way, if you have not read the book 13 Hours, and I know this will be backwards on here, but if you've not read the book 13 Hours or have not seen the movie 13 Hours, I strongly recommend it. It's something that's going to be important for you to know when you're having conversations with people here this next 50-some days before the election, to explain why it's so critical that we make sure that Hillary does not get elected. Now, on Friday, Bob started this program. When he started talking about it, he was talking about the loss of manufacturing, especially on the east side of Minneapolis, but it's nationwide, the loss of manufacturing and those jobs. And he did a very good job covering that. What I want to talk about, though, is a little bit different. I don't, I'm an economics nerd, and I have no problem with loss of jobs if it's because technology has outdated it. I do not believe in I'm not a fan of any kind of protectionism to try to protect an industry that really it's time for it to go. So with that, one of my favorite economists is a guy named Paul Pilzer. If you ever want to read some interesting stuff, is what an earpiece, Robert? So I don't know what you're talking about. No, I don't have an earpiece now. But anyway, so what? Again, I don't have a problem with an industry going down if it's because of a technology thing. One of my favorite economists, Paul Pilzer, he really explains something that makes a lot of sense, and that was that if you go back into history and you go back to 1930, there were 300 million American farmers that barely produced enough food to feed just the 30 million Americans that were the 100 million Americans that were in the country at the time. By 1980, technology had improved so dramatically that what you had now was you had 3 million farmers out of that original 30 million that were still farming. And that, so what they do is those 3 million farmers now were producing so much food by 1980 that the government was actually paying them not to farm some of their land because they were having such a surplus, and it was messing up the pricing because of technology. Now that happened over a 50-year time frame. So what happened is a lot of those 30 million farmers got old, retired, died, what have you, and their children had moved into town. Then statistically, in 1980, there were 250, maybe almost 300,000 individuals in Indiana and in Michigan that were building carburetors, things like that, as far as that kind of stuff. They were involved in the manufacturing of carburetors. By 1985, there were none because carburetors went away and we went to electronic fuel injection. And it wasn't the same people doing those. So a lot of those people migrated to different jobs. In fact, in Indiana and Ohio, at that time, there were about 250,000 people manufacturing vinyl records. So that was, in fact, in 1990, I guess it was 1989, was the #1 year for vinyl record manufacturing in history. 1990, CDs came in and wiped out the vinyl record industry. So, but the point is that is going to happen, and it's going to happen on a continuous basis. We're always going to have new technology that's going to erase certain opportunities. But in a growing, thriving economy, what that does is it frees up a workforce that can go into the new businesses that join, the new businesses that are started, the new businesses that take that worker base and put them into new things. So it increases the overall pie of the economy because also now we have more industries, we have more businesses. Well, that's not happening right now, and that's where the big difference is we have now had a very, very unfriendly business unfriendly administration for the last 8 years. We've got, just in the last 8 years, the Obama administration has added 29,000 new regulations to businesses that they have to deal with. And I mean, we're talking about a serious, nasty thing for a businessman to operate. In fact, it's so bad that it's the first time in history that we have less new businesses being started each year than we have that are failing or closing. That's never happened before, but that is the case we're at now. All the laws and all the rules and all the regulations that have come into place over the last 8 years, and actually going back further than that, have been, especially like Dodd-Frank, for instance, was a great example of that. Dodd-Frank is designed to kill small businesses. If you aren't big enough to have an entire floor of compliance employees that just keep you compliant, you can't stay in business. So it's basically designed to push small businesses out, small banks out, it's designed to do that. I mean, Dodd-Frank, Barney Frank said that one of his goals was to make sure that there was no such thing as a mortgage broker afterwards. And I mean, those of us in the industry, there's very few. I can't even think of anybody right now that is a broker. Most of them have had to join banks to still be viable. So That was a huge industry that's no longer here. So what's going on now, this is the part that's scaring me, and this is the part that I think that we need to really have in our conversations when we're talking to people that think this is just another election. It is not just another election. This one is, I would say there's been the three most important elections in history were 1800, 1860, and 2016. 1800 was the first time in history that power changed from one faction to another without bloodshed. So that was the most important election in human history. It was the first time that had ever happened. 1860 was what ended up in the Civil War, and then 2016 will determine if we are a free market, free republic or not. It will not be. There's no choice if we mess this one up. You know, there's guys out there that are still hanging on with the idea that they're going to get their favorite Republican that got beat by Trump in 2020. Guys, it ain't going to happen. 2020, it's over if we don't win this one. I'm going to tell you, there'll never be another Republican president in any of our lifetimes if this happens, and I'll explain why in a second. Well, let me just do it now. Hillary has already said that she's going to nationalize and make citizens of the 30 million, 20 to 30, whatever it is, million illegal immigrants that are there, plus all their families who are not here yet. That means that all those people can vote. That means that they're going to be they're trying to get a huge, large dependent class that's looking for welfare, things along that line, so that they'll vote for the Democrats that are coming from socialist countries, so they're familiar with socialism. The other thing that she's going to do is she's going to pick the next Supreme Court judge if she is elected. If she does, that puts a 5-4 already in there. And I promise you this, if that's the case, we'll never get anything through again. Then she'll also stack the court over the next 4 to 8 years if she actually gets in there. So you can forget ever seeing another Republican elected. There will be no turning back. This will be it if we don't get this done. This is why this is absolutely critical that we all get out there and get this done. So again, this is our Facebook-a-thon. So get on there and put some of your friends into our group here so they can start hearing these messages as well. Now, talk about those 29,000 new business regulations and what's happened with those. What I want to point out on that is this. Those laws, quote unquote, that are being written by the executive and judicial branch of the government. The Congress, House and Senate, have basically given up control of their powers. They are allowing this to happen. They should have shut off the funds to anybody that was trying when these laws were put in place, because they're not laws. Laws cannot, in our republic, constitutionally, can only be written by the Congress. They can be signed by the executive branch. But right now what's happening is the EPA and the FDA and all the alphabet soup are quote unquote writing laws. And we're abiding by them as if they are laws. You know, I was planning on doing this outside, then my internet feed wasn't working for some reason. So I was going to be smoking a cigar, and the reason being is I wanted to make a point of something. And the reason I wanted to point out with a cigar is I wanted to point out something that's going on right this minute, it just happened in August of this year. I don't know if you knew this, but on May 5th, the FDA announced that they've put new regulations on cigars. And what they're going to do is shut down, at least by their own internal government numbers, it'll shut down half of the cigar stores. The reason being is this: what they're targeting is any cigar that's been made that's new since 2007. That's about 10 years. Will have to be going back to the government to go through extensive testing, which will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to the manufacturers, and then before they get released again to be used as a product. Now, most of the most popular cigars have been made in the last 10 years. So there's a huge renaissance right now of the hand-rolled high-end cigar. Now, the thing you got to realize, all these are cottage businesses. The people that are rolling them, the little stores are family-owned. They've been owned by that same family many times for decades. What you're going to see is they're trying to put them out of business. They're trying to, because they know they can't afford all this regulation, they can't do it. But this is just a microcosm. I just wanted to bring up the cigar one because that's something that's happening right now, and what it comes down to is they're doing that to mortgage companies, they're doing that to banks, they're doing that to farmers. They're, right now they're putting all these places where the farmers can't go as part of their own land because they're calling it water land or whatever from the EPA. They're you can be arrested for doing things on your own property. It's insane. We have got, and these things are laws that are being made by unelected bureaucrats. So we've got to start taking back control, and this is what this election is really all about. So basically, I wanted to point that out. By the way, if you are a cigar smoker, or even if you're not, help us out on this. There is a website you can go to that's bit.ly/1, capital T, small h, capital X, small n, capital G, small g. I don't know why the caps, but it works because that's the only way I could get in. So what you need to do is you need to go in there, and then you put your zip code in. You can ask your congressmen and senators to try to stop this particular bill. It went into law in August, but it will be fully effective in 2 years. So that was one of the things I wanted to point out. And what I really want you to understand on this is this: with all these new regs and with all this lawless laws made by people that are not part of the legal process. They're not the House and Senate writing these laws. It's, these bureaucrats writing these laws. We can't do anything about it if Hillary wins, because she will put in that last justice. And that justice means that no matter what we take up, if we take it to the Supreme Court to prove that it's unconstitutional, they're going to find some way to rewrite it to make it constitutional. And I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. Why we've got people are talking. Robert talked a lot about the union jobs going away. Everyone assumes that is because that you've got to is because of, what they try to tell us is because of the wage gap, how much money someone's paying for wages. Well, the wages are higher here. That's fine. But the difference is, it's not the wages that's really making the difference. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. That's huge. We also have the most regulations in the world. So just by trying to maintain those regulations and those taxes, we'd have a whole lot of jobs here again if we can get past those. When it comes to why did I choose Trump, I wanted to tell you a little bit about that, because you're going to be talking to people in your circle that you're trying to convince why it's why they need to get behind Trump, why they don't go with Gary Johnson, why they don't go with Hillary, whatever it is. There are still some of those people that are Republicans that are holdouts that are saying, Bush didn't get in, so I'm not voting, or Cruz didn't get in, so I'm not voting. They need to understand what's really at stake, and they need to figure this out. How I got to Trump is I was a big Scott Walker fan. I mean, for 4 years, I was pushing for Scott Walker. What I found out was that Scott, got no attention, got actually no air in the room. Then all of a sudden, this Trump guy comes in, and Trump's saying he's going to do something, and immediately he was, getting all the attention. What I started saying as soon as it happened, because we live in a celebrity-driven society, and he had a 98% name recognition. I'm going, this guy will win if he's serious. I just didn't know if he was serious. So I'm kind of watching him. And then he started doing some things that really impressed me. He starts getting attacked, if you recall. All of a sudden, he starts losing this contract, and Macy's cuts him, and then he loses his TV show, and all these different things start happening where they started going after him financially, and he didn't care. He kept going forward. And I had never in my entire life ever seen that. When I was like 19 or 20 years old, this would have been probably 79 or 80, I was at a conference, and the speaker was a retired governor from Wisconsin, Republican. And he was talking about our founders and what they really envisioned. They did not envision people going to D.C. and making a career out of it, and raising their kids off that income and doing everything, and making a job out of it. He said that was not what they wanted. They wanted people to go out and become wealthy, and go well in their own businesses, and then at the end of their life to go in and give back by going in and serving for a period of time where they didn't need the money. They didn't need anything from that Washington had to give them. They were there to make a difference, and they were going to take that wisdom they learned out of the streets back to D.C. to get something done. Well, all of a sudden I'm watching Trump that's just basically oblivious to the fact they're just going after his money. He's losing hundreds of millions of dollars, and he doesn't care. He keeps going forward. Now he's got my attention, because the guy that was always my dream candidate to be president was Newt Gingrich. And Newt, the second they went after his money, he was gone. So and was, out of the race. So all of a sudden, I'm seeing something that I'm going, is this the first time I've ever seen this? The closest thing to it was Ronald Reagan. He made his money in the movies, and so he didn't need the money here. So he gave back 8 years at the end of his life, 16 years, 8 in California, and then 8 for the country. And all of a sudden I'm seeing the same kind of thing in Trump. And the more I watched him and the more I started realizing what he was doing and the more he was saying, all of a sudden he had me. I was there. I'm like, okay, this may be our shot. This may be the one time in any of our lifetimes that we can actually send someone there who is not viable, someone that is available to go back and say, okay, let's make some changes. Let's put some common sense back into this whole process. I don't, the people that get all upset about the fact that he doesn't give specifics, I could care less. He's a CEO. The CEO mentality, what you do is you find, organizations and you put good quality people in these different spots and follow their advice, listen to what they have to say, make decisions. And that's something I'm absolutely sure he will do. He is a leader. He's a proven leader. He's proven that he can do these things. So I'm trying to say that this particular one is it. This is the election of your lifetime. This is, why am I involved in this? Why am I doing things? Because let me tell you, yesterday was a hard day for me because yesterday was the 5th anniversary of my father's death. He was 9, 10, 11 when he passed away. One of the saddest things for me was the fact that his last few years, he was so brokenhearted by seeing what was happening to the country. He was frustrated and upset by what he was seeing with Obama and what Obama was doing to destroy this country. And, I understand what he was going through. I sit there now and I look at my children who are all, millennials that are starting successful careers and doing well. And I see their futures at risk due to what's going on with this country. Then I see, I'll survive. Okay. I'm 59. I'll be fine. I'll be bummed out and it'll be horrible for all of us, but I'll survive. But I'm looking at my kids that are 30 and 20 and 26 and 19, and I care greatly about what their future is. I'm looking at my granddaughter who is now a little over 2 months old. These kids are why I'm doing this. If you have kids, if you have grandkids, if you have nieces and nephews, if you have people you care about, guys, this is it. This is the single solitary time that will make a big difference on whether they're going to be free or whether they're going to be serfs to the state. That's really where it is. You're going to end up being, working for the government or, in some capacity, or you're going to have an opportunity to be free and do what you dream and whatever your vision is. So guys, get on that on the site here. Get some people involved in our Facebook-a-thon. Go to Trump, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan People's Grassroots Campaign and friend your friends on here. Link them into it. Let's get these numbers up. Let's get some things done in here, guys. I've enjoyed talking to you. I hope that this makes some sense, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon. So I'm out of here. What's I say here? When you want to? Okay, we want you to add your pro-Trump Facebook friends, especially from Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. That's absolutely true. So thanks, Robert. Guys, I'm out of here. Talk to you later.